In the light of the recent Muslim terrorist attack in Istanbul at the airport, we thought it would be important and useful to show you why Istanbul is such a key city in the ongoing fight between Islam and the West. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Whetting the appetite. Part of what our goal is in this two-part series is to give you a rough outline of why Turkey and Istanbul are so critical in the history of the struggle between Islam and Christianity, or Islam and the rest of the world. We're going to have some details that we look into fairly significantly, and other ones we're barely going to touch on. My encouragement to you is, if you are interested in these aspects of history, to go ahead and do more research. You will find it at once interesting and perhaps a little bit troubling. All right, so let's begin. Turkey is what used to be a part of the Roman Empire. Now, we'll start to do some little quizzes. What was the capital of modern-day Turkey? Istanbul. What was Istanbul called before it became Istanbul? Constantinople. Constantinople. What was it called before then? It was called Byzantium. And it had a third name, New Rome. So let's start our story where the story begins, and that is the ancient Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was based in Rome until Constantine. And during the reign of Constantine, he decided that Old Rome, as it became called, was in a significant slump, and that because the empire had been broken up and there was rulers that were ruling, sometimes two, sometimes four different leaders, he fought to reunite the empire and decided that he would not rule from Old Rome, but that he would create a new capital. And he chose Byzantium. He chose this city because of its location on the Bosphorus. If you look, you've heard of the Strait of Dardanelles. It's a teeny little strait that controls access to the Black Sea. Now, the Black Sea is where Crimea is, and Sevastopol, the deep water port that the Russians insist, and understandably so, that they will control that naval port for their Navy, and obviously their submarines as well. There's a very small pass that they have to get out, and Constantine decided that this was going to be a great location for the new capital by virtue of its reach to all points south, east, west, and then, of course, to the north was the Black Sea, which shielded him because there were no significant enemies to the north. The city was changed from Byzantium to Constantinople. And the empire, the Byzantium Empire, as it was also called, or Byzantium, or New Rome, the Roman Empire, Byzantium reigned and ruled there, the great city, this magnificent city, for over 1,000 years. Over 1,000 years. But before we go there, I want to go back even further. Any of you who are Christians and have a study Bible, you will note that if you open up to the back of the Bible, there's usually 4-color maps about Paul's missionary journeys. Let's put up some of those different maps. Look at the cities that are in those maps. In Greece, you have Corinth, Thessalonica. In Turkey, modern-day Turkey, you have the region of Galatia. You have the biblical cities of Ephesus, Colossia. You have Smyrna, Miletus, Pergamum, Laodicea. Those of us who read our Bibles and study our Bibles, we recognize these names. this region became the cradle of Christianity. First under Paul's preaching, and then when Constantine converted, he decriminalized Christianity. And then, if my memory is correct, his son, Constantine II, criminalized the worship of pagan idols. All right, so you went from Christianity being against the law to Christianity being legal, tolerated. Then you went to the public worship of idols being made a criminal act, which effectively obliterated all the pagan idols of the Roman world. You had one brief window where one of Constantine's descendants, Julian the Apostate, reigned, and he said, we're going to throw out Christianity and we're going to bring back the pagan idols. That did not last long. And after he died, the Roman Empire went back and remained a Christian empire. So this history, this table that we're setting, I want you to understand that the region that we are discussing now was the very cradle of Christianity. When we read the book of Acts, when we read the book of Ephesians, the book of Colossians, when we see in the book of Revelation references to Laodicea, we are reading about the areas where Christianity prevailed and converted people from paganism to the true God. That's the heritage. That's the history of this region. And that's what has been lost. We're going to talk about what happened. Don't go away. If you own a business and would like to advertise on our program, please contact us. We are currently seen on over 130 television stations from coast to coast. We air at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then all times are local. We have a lot of reach, friend, and this is an opportunity at a great price for you to get your product or your service in front of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people. Also, if there's something that's important to you and you'd like to have a month where you just say thank you to this ministry or promote a certain ministry or a certain cause, contact us. Our rates are incredibly affordable. You'd be surprised. And you, again, can reach into hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of homes. We're currently seen possibly in over 30 million homes. So give us a call, give us an email, and we'll put a commercial up for you. Horror, grief, anger, compassion, and fear. Each of those responses are legitimate, not only legitimate, but required if we're going to have a morally appropriate reaction to some of the things that we are about to discuss. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Well, almost 40 years before that, in 1453, Constantinople was sacked by the Muslims. Now again, look at this map. Muslims had taken North Africa. They made it into Spain and controlled Spain for about 3 centuries. They overran Persia within the first 100 years after Muhammad's death. They made it literally into modern-day India and China. But they were never able to defeat the Byzantine Empire until the 1450s. When they took the city, it was, first of all, the city was considered impregnable. The Navy, remember I told you about the Strait of Dardanelles? The Muslim Navy was knocking at the door, but they couldn't get into the bay. And it looked like they were going to be defeated. The leader of the Muslim forces ordered one night that as soon as the sun set, on a very moonless, dark night, that the ships be moved about 6 miles over land. And they pulled the ships with ropes. They put logs underneath them to roll them. And they moved the ships into the harbor. So when the citizens of Constantinople awoke in the morning, rather than being safe, because they'd been under siege for a while, and rather than thinking that they were going to prevail, which it looked like they were going to, suddenly the enemy was inside the camp. It was a very short few weeks, matter of days, and the Muslims conquered Constantinople. It was a horrifying, brutal orgy of rape and violence and bloodshed. Young girls, young boys, they rode into Hagia Sophia with their war horses, and they slaughtered everyone on the inside. Now, so that you grasp the significance of this loss, because most of us don't have a knowledge of this history, we have a British central history, not an Orthodox central history. In the mid-500s, the Emperor Justinian, he built Hagia Sophia. And when it was all done, he said, "O Solomon, I have outdone you." It was the most magnificent church structure for nearly 1,000 years on the entire planet. Look at this underground cistern. They call it the Basilica Cistern now. There are 2.8 million cubic feet of water. So the emperors created this underground water supply so that if drought happened, they could still have water. This was done on an ongoing basis because Rome had aqueducts where they were having water all the time. Constantinople had a water problem, so they built this cistern. It's still there. You can go there right now. There are shops downstairs. It's absolutely astounding. I have, full disclosure, I have been to Istanbul. I've been to the Topkapi Palace where the archives of Muhammad's life are kept, been to Hagia Sophia, been to the Blue Mosque across the street, been down inside of the Basilica Cistern. It's absolutely breathtaking. But it's equally horrifying because this church, this magnificent, unparalleled church, was the scene of not refuge, not sanctuary, where people were hiding, pleading for mercy. It was the site of the death of thousands of murders when the Muslims came in. And then they just flat out stole it and turned it into a mosque. And that part of the story is critical. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Friend, this program is supported by friends like you who believe in what we are doing. We run a very tight ship. Thankfully, we are on over 130 stations across the country, having tremendous impact. We get emails every day. We get letters in the mail, not every day, but almost every day. We hear from people who love what we're doing. What people don't understand is that it's sort of expensive to produce a television show like this. It doesn't require earth-shattering funds, but it does require financial help. So I am asking you, if you enjoy this program, throw us a $10 or a $20 bill every once in a while, or even a $50 or a $100 check. You see the address there on the screen. Your gifts are not tax deductible, by the way, because we want to be able to say what we want to say regarding politics without the IRS telling us no. So if you like the program, I ask for your support. When Constantinople fell to the Muslim hordes, a shudder of fear and terror went through all of Christendom. It was unthinkable that this city, with its rich history, with its Christianity, would be in the hands of these violent infidels, but it was also terrifying because of what it meant militarily. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about the military consequences, but first let's talk about the loss of Hagia Sophia and the loss of the city. As I mentioned to you, Constantinople was considered a jewel. The learning, the books, the libraries, sacred book after sacred book was thrown into the fire. This beautiful church with amazing art and iconography. In fact, this image of Jesus behind me is called Christ the Pantocrator, Christ the ruler of creation, ruler of the universe. This was plastered over. So when the Muslims took Hagia Sophia, they covered up with 6 inches of plaster the walls, the ceiling, because it was just filled with Christian icons. And they hung various arabesques, words saying that Muhammad is the prophet of God, passages of the Quran, and they turned it into a mosque. And all of this art was lost. I'm going to fast forward and tell you an interesting bit of history. The Ottoman Empire sided with the Nazis, and when the Germans in World War I, and when the Germans lost to the Allied powers, the conquering allies were able to divide up the Ottoman Empire. And shortly after that, the leader of Turkey, whose name was Ataturk was his name, Kemal Ataturk, he said, we're going to make this mosque into a museum. And some of the people who came in, the archaeologists and the people who were into art, they started to chisel off some of the plaster to see what was behind it. And this is one of the first things that they found. And then they stopped. So the irony of this face peeking out from behind that, please, Lord God, hasten the day when this magnificent structure is made into a church where the true God, the true triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are worshiped. I got ahead of the story, I apologize, but it's an interesting footnote. So you have to remember that these regions that we discuss, Galatia, Ephesus, this is all Christian. And it's now been overrun, and the Muslims are in a blind fury, a maniacal rage. And in Islamic law, a conquered Christian area has the right to remain silent. No bells are allowed. No new churches are allowed to be constructed. When a church is destroyed by fire, by an army, by an earthquake, for any reason, it is not permitted to be repaired. The public preaching of the gospel, the reading of the gospels publicly, is forbidden by law. So in a very short amount of time, Constantinople, which they renamed Istanbul, and the Byzantium Empire, or Byzantium, Christianity was obliterated. Now, let the full weight of that sink in on you. Show the picture. Look at this picture of St. John the Beloved's church, the basilica in Ephesus. These are the ruins. His body was buried there. This church became desecrated. Or here's the ruins of St. Luke's church. This is where the gospel writer St. Luke was buried. Now, both of their bodies have been removed, but these grand churches, these magnificent churches where the gospel was preached for centuries, are now in complete ruins. And they are not allowed to be fixed by Islamic law. And we went to where this was an overwhelmingly Christian population, almost completely Christian, to now it's like 98% Muslim. Christianity is all but obliterated. And the reason this is important is because we think, oh, this is not really a threat, or this is the peaceful religion of Islam, or this can't happen to us. No. That's why I said there are certain emotions that we should feel. We should feel anger. We should feel horror. We should feel grief. We should feel compassion, not just for what was done, that's grief, but compassion that this is still happening to this day. And we should feel fear. We should. If you get too close to the edge and you think you might fall off and die, that's a healthy fear reaction. And when we see what the Muslims did to women and children, we should fear because they intend to do it. The devout Muslims who are following the game plan of Muhammad, you see it in ISIS, you see it in Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram. They have a plan. It's the one that Muhammad laid down, and it's the one that was exercised in Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul. Don't go away. When we come back, I want to tell you what was the fate of young boys and an elite military group called the Janissaries. Don't go away. I want to invite you to go to our website. Almost every book that I have ever written is available as a PDF online for free. We have a ton of products, training materials, tools that are available for you for free. All we ask for is that you give us your email address. That's it, so that we can stay in touch with you and, yes, from time to time, ask you to support this work. So I'm inviting you, go to the website. Now, for those of you who say, well, I don't want a PDF, I want a real book. You can get one of my books. All you have to do is pay for shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift you want. And if you can't afford anything, we'll send you the book for free. Just pay shipping and handling. Why are we doing all this? Because we want to change the direction of the country, and we need to raise up a fresh generation of warriors to do that. That's why we have this tool. I invite you, go to the website, see for yourself. As of this filming, authorities are not sure what wing of devout Islam did the terrorist attack, committed these heinous crimes in the Istanbul airport. But one thing I can tell you, even if the people in the media by and large can't figure it out, is that they're doing this because Turkey is a Muslim nation that is siding with NATO, which is made up of Christian nations, which is made up of infidels. And so they're committing an act of treachery against Islam by allowing NATO forces to fight against ISIS using Turkish air bases or what have you. So this is also part of Muhammad's blueprint that when a Muslim helps infidels, they become apostates. And so this is the way that ISIS or whoever committed this heinous crime can say, hey, you're betraying Islam and therefore we can fight you, because that's the rule that Muhammad laid down. When Constantinople fell in 1453, it opened up all of Greece, and the next major city was Vienna, all the way in Austria. And so for almost 400 years, the Turks controlled Greece. Here's what they would do. They would kidnap small Christian boys. They would often castrate them, and then they would raise them as Muslims to be part of the Janissaries, they were called. They were an elite fighting force. They served as the caliph's or the sultan's personal bodyguard, but also they were sent out on ruthless missions. For a season, they would take taxes, right? They would take payment of taxes from the Greeks. In payment, they would take boys. One source I read said that they would take 1 in 5 sons that were born. Now, mind you, these are babies held and loved by Christian parents, baptized to serve Jesus Christ, and then kidnapped and raised, and then they would be sent back, oftentimes to the very villages and the communities where they were kidnapped from, to rule them and to torment them. That's what we're dealing with. That's why a view of Istanbul, Constantinople, our understanding of it is so critical, because the story of what is told here is the story of Islam. The cradle of Christianity has been obliterated and now holds the Quran and the violence of Islamic extremism. I've got to go, but I will be back tomorrow with part 2 of this series. If you miss any part of it, you can see the whole thing online at our website. God bless you.